ashes of Joe Hill washed down, dissolved by LRT, swept up from the docks where they've been for years, swept up from the desert sand across the oceans wide, where the ashes of Joe Hill have come to stand up by our side, to stand up by our side, stand up by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have come to stand up by our side.
They said, so they turned the word liberal into something that's bad. But we were talking about it in a group of people, and we asked, what is a liberal, and where does the word liberal come from? It comes from the Latin word libre, and that means free. So basically, when I call you a liberal, I'm calling you somebody that's free, and I don't think that's too much of an insult.
I sure don't either. I think they've tried to distort and twist the term about what it means, trying to turn it into, and they don't really care about what it really means historically.
With all the Occupy Wall Street, and we're here in Wichita, Kansas, the Occupy Wichita movement, we've had a lot of people come by and honk and tell us, get a job, saying, if you're a liberal, you're probably not working. And we're here to dispel some of those myths. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Oh, liberals are just like anybody else. We're hardworking Americans and we try to do our best with our limited resources. Pretty much like conservatives. I don't really see how any type of perspective, one way or the other, changes. You have lazy liberals, certainly, just like you have lazy conservatives. And so, but I take great exception to the notion that somehow being a liberal is somehow automatically a bad thing.
And then the word progressive. Let's look at that word. We use the word progressive. We have progressive politics, and somebody that's progressing, to me, in school has always been something good, something that to aspire to progress, to go on forward. What would be the opposite of progression?
Obviously, regression.
Regression. And so where do we want to go back? How far do we want to set the time machine and go back? We'll go back to slavery? Where do we want to go?
Yeah, that probably serve conservatives who think that the South won the Civil War. But to take this idea a little further, to say what liberalism and what progressivism is one part of what the progressive perspective is going to try to accomplish. But that doesn't necessarily say that we're any better or any worse than a conservative perspective. The missing ingredient here is a shared dialogue with other liberals and other perspectives about what they want the perspective to be. And it's also important to start with a basic sense of reality. And I think that's also something that progressives and liberals are starting to find a lot of trouble coming to grips with. We've got people from the left who are saying that vaccines are causing politics, even though science has not found any connection to that. And the type of proposals they're making could do as much damage as anything that the conservatives are trying to do. And so it's important that we also have the perspective that's grounded in reality. And I also hope the progressive perspective can bring into a reality-based perspective, which is one reason why I'm asking you.
Okay. I'm Dennis Romero. I'm the state coordinator for the National Tequila Party movement. Our goal is to register and to channel into a voting bloc young Hispanics without any voting history from their family or school or whatever. And that's our main goal. I'm a progressive. Thank God. I consider myself a compassionate person. And when you talk about liberalism or progressive politics, to me, in my vision, is compassionate. That's the first thing. Let's help each other. Let's do something for the less fortunate. You know, a strong chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We've all heard that throughout the years. So you need to put the extra added society, the government, people need to put the extra added enforcement and restructuring of something that is weak. So if something is awry, something is wrong. For instance, there's poverty, hunger. Though that's what we need to emphasize. I know that there's always going to be poor people. It was in the Bible, but you'll always have the poor with you. But is it our goal as humans, as humanitarians, as Americans, to give a helping hand? And I believe that that's the great difference between a conservative political view and a liberal point of view. A liberal point of view would be, yes, let's vote yes to fund a hospital for blind children. A Republican would be saying, would more than likely vote negative on those types of issues, social issues. So, what do you think?
Well, that's just it. I mean, especially when it comes to immigration issues. I mean, I really want to have those kind of positions, but part of the problem is I just don't have enough information. There's a lot of information that conservatives are putting out on the media about what the issues should be. That immigrants are coming in illegally, they're taking their jobs. And there is some evidence to suggest that that is somewhat true. I mean, they are here illegally, they are taking jobs. But obviously there's a lot more to that.
And one of the main things is I challenge you to go to Mexico, dodge the bullets from the drug cartel war that they're supplying our drugs up here to us, so they kill each other for them. But if you go to Mexico, you're going to be shocked to see a Sam's Club, a Walmart, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, an Office Depot, on and on and on and on, of all the American businesses that do business in Mexico. And people don't realize that here in the United States. They don't realize that you can fly an American Airlines to Monterrey, Mexico, get off and rent an Avis rent-a-car to drive to the Holiday Inn to have dinner at the Sirloin Stockade in a foreign country. And that's just the way, that's the reality. And so why do you think that even the conservative administrations of the Bush administration and the Reagan administration put up with and tolerated illegal immigration? You have to ask the reason why. Why did they put up with it? Now they're using it much like the conservative way of the Republicans. They use abortion. They really, they could be pro-choice themselves, but they use abortion as an issue of rallying votes. And so that's the same thing they've done with the immigration issues. It's the huge conglomerates that hire undocumented cheap labor, and yet they won't defend it. They won't stand up and say, we need these people here. Let's keep everything under the water. The ICE says there's ICE Immigration and Enforcement Commission. They say that there are 11 million undocumented aliens here. Well, most of them are working on fake Social Security cards, Social Security numbers that they invented, but that money is being taken out of their checks. Where's that money going from let's say 11 million workers? Where's that money going? So those are the complicated questions that a lot of people aren't addressing, and they're not opening up the issue. It's the old man that has crab apples in his yard, and he runs out and yells at the crab apples and says, hey, this is a problem. Well, Dad, cut the tree down and you won't have crab apples every year. So that's the kind of way it is with immigration. Immigration, for instance, I've talked to many people, if our economy in the United States hit rock bottom, and you couldn't find a job, and they were hiring at $15 an hour in Canada, all you had to do is show up. Guess how many Yankees would be up there, because they could feed their family, They did it in the Great Dust Bowl. In this area in the 1930s was completely devastated by the Dust Bowl and by the depression that we were in. And that's how California got populated, by Okies and Kansans and people that were affected adversely to a situation, and they moved their family. So the whole thing of immigration, it's a worldwide problem, because Poor countries can't give enough jobs to their people. It happens in Europe. In Germany, they have a Turkish immigration issue. They have a Tunisian immigration issue. They have an immigration issue all throughout Europe, all throughout England, all throughout France, everywhere. And how are they dealing with it? We need to look and see how they're dealing with their immigration problem. They have a guest worker program, for one thing. That would resolve most of the immigration issues if we had a guest worker program. If a farmer says, we need 500 workers here, but the government won't give him the permission to get those 500 workers, and he can't get them from the surrounding community because nobody wants to go out there and do that. Today on the Facebook, I read a short by an Alabama farmer. He said, the best way to get rid of illegal aliens is to quit eating. So, you know, that's the truth of the matter. So if we had those guest worker programs, like Europe and like many other countries of the United States, of the world have, that would resolve it almost immediately. Because if you go to an area and I need these workers to harvest apples, and they can come up and be here for 6 months during the apple harvest, and then they can go back to Mexico to their families, and they can legally go back. They don't have to cross the desert and get kidnapped and shot and murdered and raped to get up here. That's why they stay. They get up here and they get stranded. Now there's no apples to pick, so what does this poor Hispanic family do, immigrant family? They are a drain because there's not enough work. They'll do work for cheap. They'll go to food banks. If they have kids here, they'll get food stamps. And because they can't cross that deadly border anymore, they don't want to cross that deadly border. I guarantee you, if there was marauding gangs of motorcycle gangs up on the Canadian border, that would keep us out of there. Well, that's what immigrants from South America and Central America go through Mexico and go through the war zone. But the fight to survive.
I've heard that they're what they call these coyotes that help traffic people in from Mexico. I've never heard of them sending them back. Sending the immigrants back through the coyotes. There's no illegal immigrants going back.
Right,
Once
right.
they get here,
right. You know, people really never ask that question, and this question needs to be asked. Why would a man from, I know a man, I'm talking about a specific person I know. He's a Zapote indigenous Indian. He's a Zapote Indian. He lives in Oaxaca, Mexico. He could trace his family's ancestries to his village for 500 years. And why would a man that had his house, his wife, his life, his children, and his farm and his land and his animals, why would he want to go wash dishes in a Greek restaurant in New Jersey? Nobody really stops and asks that question. They just see the results. It's the same thing as there's crab apples there. Oh, let's focus on them. No, they're coming from the tree. And so that's what we have to do. If we're going to have a successful immigration solution, it's got to include Mexico's security and prosperity. We go all over the world building nations in Iraq and Afghanistan and everywhere. Our neighbors' problems from Mexico are bleeding into the United States. And that's where the real answer to immigration is. Let's help Mexico, not prop up corrupt government officials well, look where it's led. 50,000, the number's gone to 50,000 people that have been killed since 2006 in this new drug war. 50,000! Iraq and Afghanistan? What are the...
I was noticing that. It seems very bizarre that we're talking about sending all these resources to Iraq and Afghanistan and now Libya and where else, but we don't seem to even care about what's going on in Mexico. It's like a non-issue, or we like it that way, I think is what's going on.
Right. The problem is bled over, and the evidence is 10 to 20 million undocumented people from Mexico here in the United States. So, the best of the world would be, in a perfect situation, would be that the Mexican farmer that grows corn. Before this free trade came in, 10 million Mexican families made their way as growing corn. I'll tell you why. Mexicans eat corn for tortillas for the morning, the evening, the afternoon, and for snacks. So they're the biggest corn-eating country in the world because of their diet. Well, most people don't realize this. The same people that criticize, oh, look at that ukulele, and he's over here. Well, man, sir, that man was a corn farmer, and he had his 6 kids. He wasn't a millionaire, but he could at least sell, plant his corn, take it to the market, sell it, make it to the next year, and stay in his own country, stay in his own state, stay in his own village. But millionaires, kind of like Wall Street people, have said, why don't we sell all the corn from Nebraska, subsidize it, and run it into the Mexican market, and drive those Mexican corn farmers? Who cares about them? Who cares if there's 10 million of them? But you know what? 5 years later, the spike of undocumented people went to exactly 10 million. So where are those corn farmers now? They're cutting your grass, they're paving your road, they're washing your dishes, they're cleaning your house. That's where they're at.
This gets into my pet peeve. I dedicated a lot of my time in trying to study economics, and NAFTA and free trade agreements specifically. And we can very visibly see the consequences very graphically with Mexico. Supposedly, they tell us that free trade agreements raises all votes. It's eliminating poverty. But then how do they address Mexico? Mexico is almost becoming a failed state. It's a state that's literally being run by the drug cartels now. And it seems like every day, every month, the cartels enter gain even more power. They have more weapons. They have enough weapons, and they have enough military discipline even to start to challenge the Mexican military.
Exactly.
And we can already see where this is going, because eventually it's going to start to threaten the United States directly, and then we're going to start sending our military down there. It's Iraq and Afghanistan directly to the south of us. And that really is the fruit that has been born of man, because of the subsidized corn trade that we sent down there, and not just the corn trade. All across the economy, from automobile manufacturing, they used to have their own automobile industry. And after NAFTA was passed, we bought up all of their factories, shut down all of the auto designs that they were making and designing globally, laid off the local engineers. And so now they're gone. We use their plants and their facilities to manufacture our cars. And then when we find a cheaper place in Japan, we just move everything from Mexico and move it to Japan. And China. And then to China, and then to Korea, and now they'll find some other place.
If NAFTA worked, so many factories that have closed down here in the United States and moved to Mexico, they should be Switzerland. They should be, all the jobs are down there. But that's not what's going on. I lived in Reynosa, Tamaulipas, Mexico. That's right across the border from McAllen, Texas. I lived in the neighborhood. They built like a Habitat for Humanity for underprivileged people. And we saw that the people worked at the Zenith television company.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Now, they were working at Zenith and worked there for 2 or 3 years. And I asked them, how much do you make? Because they're living in squalor. But you work at Zenith? Because a Zenith job, if you call somebody on the street here in the United States and say, where do you work? I work at the Zenith company. Oh, you're not going to think automatically this guy's homeless or borderline homeless. You're not going to think that. But these people were. So I began to investigate. How much did you make? What did you make? Well, they make minimum wage, about $65, $70 a week. And these people were quitting the Zenith jobs and going down and selling tacos on the street. They could make more money going door to door or around the street selling tacos. They could do that or shining shoes. In fact, one guy, a real friend of mine, he was like a watchman. When people would go into a theater, they'd go in there to the theater and he would watch their cars. He got a little cap on, had a little flashlight, a whistle. He made double more money doing that of tips from people than at an American Zenith company. And this is the thing, in all of those maquiladoras that have gone down there, all those Americans shut down here and raised up over there, there's always help wanted. Remember the thing about the women, how they were being killed in Juarez a couple of years back, and that's who they were? Well, those companies always need people because they pay starvation wages. Milk is $4.50 a gallon in U.S. in Mexico right now. Wow. So you need to investigate. I appeal to the people that are conservative. Investigate before you criticize. Find out how much is a pound of beef, a pound of pork, a pound of chicken. Find out those prices. They're on the internet. I want to get them up and let people see them because you'd be shocked.
Yeah, I've heard also had a counter argument thrown in my face that there are some jobs that were manufactured by them that paid a lot more than minimum wage. And in fact, some of the retirement benefits for these workers were even more generous than what we get here in the United States. They only have to be there for 10 years. 10 years is nothing. Well, the problem is that I come to find out that these jobs were dealing with hazardous chemicals, extremely hazardous chemicals. And these workers were falling over dead within 6. And so, what's the point? You know,
Johnson Control was one of the big ones there. I mean, they were, but the thing is, okay, when a company does relocate to Mexico, yes, probably 20 people are going to get a good job. 20, 30 people. But the majority of the people. So what does that do? When you shut down a factory in Arkansas, the Schwinn bicycle factory, or whatever, you shut down a factory in the United States, in Arkansas, they have 400 workers. You ship it to Mexico. What does it do? It pisses off the workers that now they don't have a job. Now they don't, they don't have any income. That pisses them off. Then you go to Mexico, give those jobs at wages that people can barely eat, make a living. It's obvious, you know why? Because they're all up here. There's 20 million up here trying to work, trying to make a living because those jobs down there, they can't even support their family. They can barely eat on those wages. Those are starvation wages in this economy. So NAFTA has to be revisited. And it needs to be, well, does this create undocumented workers? Does this create, we need to think more about people and not about money as the bottom line. That's where this is at.
We need to challenge the record there. And one of the parts of the program is to be hopefully we want to make a format where we do live call-ins. Obviously we don't have a live call-in format, don't even have a phone. We do have a small audience in front of here, and we got one guy that wants to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to identify some of the products that was manufactured here where they lost their job, got sent to Mexico, now are sold or manufactured at a price that barely is able to keep them alive, and then turn around and brought back here and sold at a probably outrageous price? Can those companies be identified? Can those products be identified? And this truth that's being presented here, I think this truth here needs to be made available to the people. I didn't know what you were saying, and I listened to it, and it just makes me angry, really angry. And I know there are people up there, the conservatives, the Republicans, they sit up there, and they look down on everybody else, they put people down, and yet, how can they do that if they know? Well, I think it's time they know.
Well, I think it's definitely, you hit on a good point there. It's education, 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 and that's what this progressive perspective is all about. Is getting on there. We hopefully get on TV, hopefully we're going to be on YouTube. We're going to make it out there and have a lot more people's input and let some of the truth be known. So when you talk about immigration, you have a background of, yes, I know about the maquiladoras, I know about NAFTA free trade, I know why. That's the main question that needs to be answered. Why did they come up? Just to have an adventure? Or what the heck? But why? And if the American public can be educated on those issues, we can make a change. We can get people in there. We can ask Congress, pass these bills. For instance, the reason why there hasn't been mass deportations is because the Treasury Department says, hey, if you knock all these people out, we're going to lose a lot of money because they're all working and paying taxes.
Because Alabama's learning the hard way.
Well, like the Alabama says, quit eating. Because they're the one picking the fruit. There's tomatoes rotting in the fields because they're not going to do it. And for whatever reason, I know there are a lot of Americans who would go out there and pick tomatoes. They're not making the connection, and they're not stepping up into business. So whatever needs to be done. And plus, how much has the Hispanic influence been a part of the melting pot of America? I mean, Mexican restaurants are the #1 restaurant. Them and Chinese, you know, so are we an embracive society? You know, I always ask everybody, what makes America great? Is it because they're Italian, Irish, German, French? No. Or it's because we know how to live in a democratic society. Remember when Bill Clinton used to go jogging and he would stop in at a McDonald's and the girl behind the counter would say, "Welcome to McDonald's, Mr. President, how may I help you?" And when a person, there was a homeless guy in front of him one time, they caught this, and she waited on that homeless person, and she said to him, "Welcome to McDonald's, how may I help you?" The same thing she said to the president. So that's a sense of fair play that is a result of living in a democratic society. Another quick thing is, do you know what most foreign countries, most third world countries don't have? Four-way stop. They won't have a four-way stop. We can deal with the four-way stop. You know, when you go to a four-way stop, just, hey, I'm going through, to hell with everybody else. You know, you need to slow down and take consideration. And that's a result of having a democratic society where you get as much chance as I do. And that is what draws people from all over the planet to here, the opportunity to be treated equally.
I think part of the problem that we have with the immigration issue isn't we're so reactionary in trying to deal with it. We've got an illegal immigration problem. I think it's fair to say that that's a legitimate claim, but just simply sending them back is obviously not a viable solution. It's been a problem for so long that they have families here, and some of them are even American citizens right now, and just sending them back, you can't do that without breaking up a lot of families.
Right now,
it's going to be a long road trying to get out of it.
Well, check it out. This is the way a lot of this stuff is. People don't realize this, but a guy might have, for whatever reason, he falls in the hands of the immigration. He's deported. They don't ask the question. He's got 3 American children that are now going to go on welfare, and we're going to support till they're 18 years old, and his wife. So, right there, I sell cars just down the street. And I have these young men from Mexico come in. They're buying $20,000 vehicles, $15,000 vehicles because they're sheetrockers, or they're roofers, or they're concrete workers, and they're hard workers, and they're supporting a family here. They're taken out of the mix. You're left with a mess. You're left with a mess right there because these kids are not going to deport. They're not going to, well, my dad's deported to Mexico, so I'm going to go back. So the mother's going to stay. So basically, ICE is turning for every man they deport, they're probably putting 3 or 4 people on welfare right then and there. Let the conservatives hear that when you're talking about deport them. Because you can't deport the American citizens. But you're leaving the American citizens here without support.
That I did not know.
Yes.
That really is a game changer.
Yes. So and that's why President Obama has said, let's put a moratorium on the deportations right now, only violent criminals. Okay, fine. Violent criminals, nobody wants them. You know, violent criminals, somebody that's going to kill you, shoot you, break into your house, assault you, rape you. You know, you don't want that person no matter where he's from. You don't want him around you. Put him in prison, put him away, put him across the border, whatever. But I'm talking about just a guy that worked as a roofer. And somehow the immigration got a hold of him. Cops in some states here in the United States pull him out because he has a broken tail light. And a broken tail light, if you're in the right county.
Yeah, it must have been violence to break that tail light.
But a broken tail light in Oklahoma, and I can start naming the states, will get you deported. A speeding ticket will get you deported. You know, and let alone, so what's happening? People aren't calling the cops anymore because in the Hispanic community, domestic violence is going rampage because the woman knows, well, I'd rather take a black eye than get him deported. So that's why they're not responding. They're not responding. You know, the people aren't calling cops. People are getting their cars stolen, not calling the cops. People are getting, you know, in trouble, physically, violently, you know, assaulted, and they don't call the police because they know that any encounter with the police will get them deported. Whether they're the victim or not, they're going to get deported. And so, and they have all these American children here. They're called 14th Amendment Americans. That camp went back all the way to the Civil War. They wanted to know what to do with the slaves. They said, well, what are they? They're from Africa. And so Congress passed the law and said, in 1865, if they were born here, that's the 14th Amendment, that they are Americans. Well, our precious amigos from the Republican Party want to say they have to have their grandparents born here to be an American citizen. If they pass that, you know, half the East Coast has grandma and grandpa from Sweden or Ireland or Finland or whatever. So what's that going to do? That's just the frustration and the fear that they try to sell on the Republican side of, oh, look out, you know, be worried, you know. First it was the communists. Remember, we grew up, oh, the communists are going to blow up the world. Oh, be afraid of the communists. Well,
then it was a drug war. Oh, we got to be afraid of the drug dealers.
There you go. There you go. Now it's the terrorists. Everybody's a terrorist. Since 2009, I don't know if you played that or not, but 2001, you know, 9/11, that happened. Yeah. But we still are living on the fear of that. You know? And I think most level-headed Americans are coming out of that. And that's the same thing with immigration. The right and the radio pundits, Rush Limbaugh, John O'Reilly, all those kind of guys have demonized the undocumented alien. They're not going back to say the reason they're here. They're just saying there's those crab hunters. That's all they're doing. They're looking at the results. So, and the results are a man just trying to feed his family. A man just trying to have enough money to send money back to his wife and kids so they can eat. And we're going to grab that person up and throw them out. This is America, you know. Let's not be the America of the 1950s where they had lynchings and castigated the African Americans. Let's not be that. Let's not have to go through every race that wants to come on board. We have to, you know, lynch them and hang them and make them fight and burn cities down to get our respect and to get our attention.
Well, obviously this is, you know, even our conversation here, this is obviously a very, very complicated issue. We probably still just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But we are starting to run out of time here. This is intended to be a pilot to show what the show's potential really is. And like I said, we'd like to take more questions. We're working on, this is just the start, so there's not really much, there's literally 2 people in the audience. And so,
and the cameraman.
And the cameraman. So yeah, we don't want to forget him. And so this is the start of what we're talking about. And I would like to ask other organizations to help lend support to also lend us experts on various issues, from everything from evolution, education reform, environmental change, just to start with. And to also talk about how we can work with these issues, and not just to correct the record from conservatives, but also to educate liberals and perspectives what these issues really are. Because we don't have all the facts either, and there's a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. You have something else that you want to know?
Well, I just think that that the more education, the more educated a person is, the more responsible they're going to be to society. You know, so that's what we have. Another question.
I see that you are extremely passionate about the subject that you're talking about. What is it that you hope to accomplish as a result of your effort here to share the knowledge that you have with the few of us and hopefully the many of us?
Well, for one thing, on the immigration issue is this. We can't treat Mexico as a country like Indonesia. They are next door neighbors. You know how far it is to Mexico? 3 minutes. It takes you 3 minutes to walk across the U.S. border. I walk across the bridge, walk across San Diego Bridge, hundreds of points of entry. So we have to treat Mexico as a neighbor and not a foreigner. We don't treat Canadians. If I say, oh, he's Canadian, we feel like they're our northern states. You know, we feel one, we share a language, you know, so that brings us closer. But our Mexican neighbors, our neighbors to the south, if they are at peace and they are prosperous, they won't need to come here. And just like Canadians, most Canadians, oh God, I don't have a job in Canada, I have to come to the United States. They don't do that. No, they do come, natural immigration. People, Frenchmen go to wherever before, but it's not a desperate,
yeah, just wanting to change the scenery.
Right, right. But it's not the desperation. That's what we have to do. If we can influence our politicians to have a different perspective on this immigration solution, and the long-term immigration solution is the prosperity and security of our southern neighbor. And if I can raise that awareness, and enough people say, hey, yeah, look, you know, this Occupy Wall Street movement is just showing that we are another generation of 60s here, you know, and there's some of us that I remember the 60s. I was a young boy, but I remember the movement, I remember the peace rallies, I remember the night that Martin Luther King got shot, I remember people going crazy and the things in the turbulent times that happened, but it's formed our society. I think we're going through another cycle of people standing up, and even on the right, even the Tea Party and everybody. People are coming getting off of their living room couches and getting into the streets and saying, I'm not going to take it anymore. Listen to me.
And standing up can be just something as simple as simply saying, this is who I am. This is who I really am. And this is what my hope is to show everything about. And it probably won't convert conservatives, but I think it will show what conservatives that we are not people to be feared. We are not the enemies. And I think that will bring us a lot closer to a more united civilization, and to actually start getting past some of the partisan divide that's been poisoning our show. Well, I think we're almost out of time, so that's our pilot, and it's pretty rough around the edges. You'll have to forgive the lighting situation here. This was fairly impromptu, and hopefully this will give you an idea of what we're trying to accomplish.
I would like to propose that maybe every couple of weeks we come in here and we want to have a town hall meeting in here and film the questions and the people, and let it be a progressive perspective movement that we can be here, people from Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, they had it here just a minute ago, and begin to get other people's comments, ideas, and suggestions.
Start taking more answers.
Yes, and be more community involved. Get a lot of young people in here, people of ethnicities, and people from labor. Get different people in here to show that being a progressive is a big tent. It engulfs a lot of people.
Not just a big tent, a big civilization.
Big civilization. There you go.
And with that, we'll have to sign off the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The ashes of Joe Hill washed down, dissolved by LRT, swept up from the mountain tops where they've been for years, swept up from the desert sand across the oceans wide. Well, the ashes of Joe Hill have come to stand up by our side, to stand up by our side, stand up by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have come to stand up by our side. To his shirt they pinned a paper heart right above his chest, and he called those volleys down himself. Their bullets did the rest. His comrades built a flaming pyre. On that night he died. And the ashes of Joe Hill have come to walk right by our side. Yeah, to walk right by our side, to walk right by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have to walk right by our side. Well, they sent his ashes around the world, released on every wind, so he could lay upon the land, rest among his friends. But his holiday is over, he's rising with the tide, and the ashes of Joe Hill have come to march right by our side. And to march right by our side, to march right by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have come to march right by our side. Well, those long-haired preachers still come out at night, preaching right and wrong. And it's funny how we know ahead of time which side we'll fall on. But we've got a world to win, built on love and pride. And the ashes of Joe Hill have come to march right by our side. Fight, to fight right by our side, to fight right by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have come to fight right by our side. Yeah, to fight right by our side, to fight right by our side. The ashes of Joe Hill have come to fight right by our side, to march right by our side, to walk right by our side, to stand up by